Guys, what if I told you that the most feared American muscle car from the 80s didn't even
All
have
I
a
ever
V8?
wanted was a black Grand
It
National.
was a dark, unassuming, quiet machine that came from a place where you wouldn't even expect it. Essentially, it was what we would call today a sleeper. I mean, I think this is the essence of a perfect sleeper, honestly. And it came in all black. And what if I told you that the spirit today is back? Not as a ghost or nothing crazy like that, but it's a brand new kind of monster and it's been hiding in plain sight. Because I've seen a lot of people talk about this car, but never have I heard, at least I'm not saying it's not out there, but I haven't heard anybody mention the comparison between these two cars. Because twice, guys, in the last 40 years, American muscle has had to reinvent itself in order to stay alive. The first time being 1987 with a blacked out turbocharged Buick that shattered everybody's expectation. And now it's happening again to me with the Dodge Charger Sixpack. Dodge have resurrected the formula of the super sleeper, guys, with a six pack, and they aimed it squarely at their biggest competitors, or at least the giants out there. And to me, this isn't just a new car. I mean, it's an idea that's being reborn, and it's the idea that real power could come from a quiet or subtle place and it doesn't have to shout at anybody, as you see a lot of places or a lot of companies is doing today. To understand where we're going, you kind of have to understand where we've been. The names Charger and Grand National, they're both American icons, but they took a completely different route to achieve that status. I mean, we all know the Dodge Charger was born in the fire of the 1960s, where that horsepower battle between American cars. And so this is a golden age for muscle cars right in that era. And so it built its legacy from dominating the NASCAR. Guys, you remember in my last video, we talked about the scope of American car battles changing. That's an old way of doing battle, where all American cars took place in drag racing and NASCAR, which is an American motorsport. And they battle in the showroom from coast to coast. Where back in the days they used to race on the NASCAR track and showrooms in America. They race in America coast to coast and stuff like that. Well, if you look, the Dodge Charger was dominating the NASCAR. And you remember they had that big winged Daytona? I think it was called the Daytona. I'll put a picture up. But it ruled with that car. And also, guys, the Dodge Charger was a king on the silver screen where I mean, everybody that wanted to have a menacing character or anti-hero had to use the Charger because it was the most menacing thing out there. Guys, as a kid, I remember the Dodge Charger having this presence about it that no other car is able to achieve. Like Dominic Toretto, when he's doing his bad boy thing, needed the Dodge Charger to bring out that a little bit more. Even Blade, if you're a Blade fan or a Marvel fan, and you remember Wesley Snipes' Blade drove a Dodge Charger. I think the cartoon modeled a Dodge Charger also as the anti-hero car. Also, you remember movies like Bullet and movies like what was that? The with the stunt man. If I remember, I put it up on there, but it was a movie about a stunt man, and yeah, the anti-hero car was the Dodge Charger. So essentially, the Dodge Charger was unapologetically in your face. I mean, so when it was brought back in the 2000s, in the mid 2000s, late 2000s, it had to have the V8. It had to cement itself as as a household name because that's what Dodge Charger is a menacing muscle car. And guys, I appreciate that Dodge brought that car back with the same menacing look. And in my opinion, it's the most muscle car out of all the modern muscle cars when it came out. Now, You have the Buick Grand National, and it didn't have the same success in NASCAR as the Charger. While the nameplate did have some ties to NASCAR, I don't think anybody know the Grand National for its NASCAR thing. What we know the Grand National for, it emerged from the 80s. Now, do you know anything about the 80s, guys? It was a hard time for performance cars in general. Not just American Muscle, but all of them, because they were battling emissions and they were battling the fuel economy. And so, really, the Grand National was just an anomaly in that era where it was based on the Buick Regal, which I had a Buick Regal growing up. Well, my parents had a Buick Regal, and I loved the car, but it was very respectable, and some could even call it a boring car. But when you painted it in all black, it was something completely menacing. Some will call it sinister. And the Buick Grand National was proof that you could build a brutally devastating quick car without using a V8 because they only had a 3.8 liter V6 in there and it was turbocharged. And it was pretty much just a middle finger to the establishment because in the 80s, I think it came out in 1987, the Buick officially rated this car at 245 horsepower, which anyone who drove that car knows that car did not make 245 horsepower. That is a total lie. I mean, that car was capable of putting fear in anybody's eyes, from the Corvette to the Mustang. If you remember my previous videos, I also mentioned that the Corvette has always been one of the fastest cars or pushing the boundaries for a sports car. I think the Corvette is obviously a faster car than the Grand National, but in a straight line, guys, the Grand National was the ultimate sleeper, and it created a myth that honestly still echoes today. This brings us to the sleeper code, guys. It's the unwritten rules that define these quiet killers. It's the language of menace spoken through both your engine or your engineering and your design crew. It's not just about the horsepower. So, in my opinion, this is just my opinion, guys. So don't kill me on it, but to me, the Grand National wrote the book on the sleeper cars. I mean, if you remember for all of us that ever wanted a black Grand National, it was a black on black on black. It was black everything, guys. It's almost like Buick decided we have no time for chrome or any other color, and so let's give them the most minimalistic car we could find. And in my opinion, that black trim created just pure intimidation, which is why I made the statement I made earlier. It didn't need any hood scoops or a giant Daytona wing, or like on these modern day cars, you see the Mustang with it looks like a race car. It didn't need any of these things. It was just an understated look that signaled danger for anybody looking onto it because of the black on black on black. And now, if you look at the new Dodge Charger Sixpack, it's a modern take on the exact same thing, in my opinion. In the era of aggressive vents, over the top styling, the new Charger is relatively clean and sleek. It's almost minimalist in its body lines. And so, that restrained vibe, it's it's bringing us back to those days again with the Grand National, in my opinion. Now, they just in the details, which is the most important return for me, is that triangle. I think that's called a Fratzog badge. And guys, that was signaling. That was a sign or the emblem Dodge used to use back in 1962 to 1976. So it's a direct link to the golden age, and it just lets you know what Dodge mind was when they designed this new car. At least on the design part of it, it's showing that they're thinking about pure heritage. Just like the Buick Grand National, the Charger Sixpack isn't a threat shouted from the rooftops, like saying, "Look, I'm here. I got all this power." You could just look at some cars and see how fast they are. Nah, and It's actually just an understated car with real exhaust and real exhaust. Look, we're not gonna talk about the sibling in the Daytona Charger or what is that the EV Charger, man. We're gonna act like that never happened. All right. So for the case of the video, I'm not gonna talk about it. But it actually is designed to sound like a modern sports car and not just a noise machine like its sibling. Uh, and it's doubling down on that by showing you can get that car as both a four door or a two door. And I think in both formats, whether it's a four door or the two, it's going to be a very practical car, letting you have the best of both worlds, which is to me the true ethos and essence of a sleeper car, letting you have your daily car and be comfortable, all the while having your weapon for the weekend. Both of these cars mark a huge change in the guard moment for these American muscle cars. It represents an end of an era and a start to a new one. In 1987, the Buick Grand National GNX, it was taken to its absolute limit. You remember McLaren had that deal working with McLaren and created that special edition Buick Grand National. I think about 500 of those was made. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think like 550. Um, about 550 was made, and it actually just marked the peak of an era, or the peak of the 80s era, where that car, I think most of us would agree, that car is making close to 300 horsepower. We don't know exactly how much horsepower it's making, but we do know it's not the 280 or whatever the GNX was rated at. It was making a lot more. And it was capable of putting down times on the 5 seconds, which for that time in the 80s, that was unheard of. And that was a mind blowing amount of power, especially when you think about, you know, 80s muscle cars or a regular car doing that. It's faster than some Corvettes and other cars like that. So today we have the 2025 Dodge Charger Sixpack, which is honestly, guys, it's in a very similar position where the legendary Hemi that we all know and love has been holding down the fort for Mopar for the longest. I'm not saying there's nothing wrong with the other V8s from the other three big manufacturers, but the Hemi, I mean, it's a Hemi. Everybody, you just say Hemi, everybody know what it is. And so now the six pack has the now that the Hemi has been retired from the Chevy lineup in the and especially in the Charger, it's up to the six pack and also the Daytona Charger to hold up that post Hemi streak for Dodge. I mean, I hope it works out for them because we want to see more from Dodge. So I'm hoping that this is a real turning point for Dodge, and I hope this is a successful one. Because me personally, guys, I like the Hurricane engine, which is an inline six. We've seen it being applied in other cars like the T-Rex or TRX. And especially in the high output format, I really like that inline six, and I'm really wishing the best come from it, and the technology is enough to hold on the muscle car reputation for Dodge, and they can keep making cars because eventually in the future, based on the success of this, I wish they would bring back the Dodge Viper. Guys, a car's legacy isn't made on a spec sheet. It's forged by the community that builds it. I mean, similar to you see this with JDM cars. A car will come out and the tuners and all the aftermarket people will take it and turn it into something that it never was straight from the factory. So in the case of the Grand National, actually earned its reputation as a tuner's dream. You remember people was getting massive power out of that platform, and it created a culture for that car that cemented itself or its legacy and kept it scary for decades. And so Six Pack with its new design, it steps right into that world with some pretty high potential because standard output already make 420 horsepower, which is that's impressive numbers. You know, BMW is making that with the inline six, and you see what people are doing with those cars. But the high output version, guys, is making 550 horsepower and 530 pounds-feet of torque. And here's the crazy part: that that 530 pound-feet of torque comes on at 3,000 RPM, and they promise it'll stay strong all the way up to its red line, which cause that means that car is gonna be pulling, giving you relentless acceleration through its whole rev range. And get this, all that power pretty much is coming to you from the 8 speed automatic transmission, but also it's going to an all-wheel drive system. Now, for purists like me, I don't really like all-wheel drive systems. So Dodge, what they give you is the ability to disconnect the all-wheel drive, allow you to send the power to the rear wheels. I love when cars do that because what that does is give you the all-wheel drive grip when you need it, and the rear-wheel drive performance when you want it. And so I think it's a perfect canvas for new generation of tuners, in my opinion. It's a modern platform built from the same thing that made the GNX, or well, even just a regular Grand National, an excellent platform to work on. So that's why I say I'm excited for this new high output Hurricane engine. So guys, this is a massive shift for from one of the most iconic muscle car brand in our history, in American history. I mean, we going from the rumbling V8 again. The Hemi is beloved. I love the Hemi, but this V6 is making more than the 5.7 Hemi that it's replacing. And so, what do you guys think? Do you think more power is gonna do you think a more powerful, no matter how much power that inline six make, you think it's ever gonna be able to replace the Hemi? Or in your eyes, is it just V8 or none? Let me know in the comment section below, guys. Comment down and let me know. And if you're enjoying this look at where muscle car has been and where it's going, please do me a favor and hit the like button and subscribe also, guys, for more content like this. So, guys, is this new sleeper formula back? Absolutely, but it's been updated for a new world. I mean, the Buick National rose from the 80s, and it had to prove that a V6 could be a weapon. It built a legend out of it. It was a quiet, menacing, turbocharged, understated car, and it changed what muscle car could have been. And in my opinion, it did that successfully and created a legend. Now the 2025 Dodge Charger is in the same. It's in a it's in a different crossroad, but it looks the same, if you know what I mean. It carries the weight of the Charger's V8 history, but now they have to do it with a newer engine that and it's more technologically advanced. It's not using the old school Hemi like Hemis used to use. And it wraps that up in the new school, clean muscle car look, which I think is executed perfectly, in my opinion. And it doesn't beg for attention. And again, we're not gonna talk about the Daytona Charger, but I feel like both the electric sibling and the V8 has a lot to live up to in the case of its V8 ancestors. So it's a different engine, different technology, but the mission's identical to what the Buick had to do. Deliver overwhelming performance to show that even with two less cylinders, we can still make a legendary car that you should buy and you'll really enjoy. And then even 4 decades later, it can or has the opportunity to show that the quietest car on the block might be the one you should fear the most.